Hi there, y'all. Let's go ahead and re-record my Mists of Tirna Scythe. It'll be the same run but different audio because the audio was just terrible, and that's not a good way to start out a series. So this is the same run, bolstering Tyrannical Prideful, but with different audio. Should still hit all the main factors though. As you can see, I'm playing my Rester Druid, who is of course Night Fae. So, and Mists of Tirna Scythe is a Night Fae dungeon, so there are special Covenant things that can happen. The very first one is at the beginning of this dungeon, which is that I can open this little gate here, and that will allow us to skip this pack here. Night Fae is so common, I don't know if I've ever had a group that had to go around here, so don't worry too much about not having a Night Fae. But note, if you are Night Fae, I'm going to point out some seeds, you gotta get them, but don't worry, that'll come further into the dungeon. Like I said, this dungeon is being done on bolstering, but not fortified. Now, non-fortified, a lot of people will like to do a very large pull right at the beginning. They may or may not hero. Usually on Tyrannical they won't hero, but they'll still do a big pull because it should be easy. However, even though I specifically warned them about them, my group decided not to give bolstering the respect that it deserves, and we end up having just a really rough start to this dungeon, but we still time it. So I really like this as an example of the fact that you can screw up your affixes pretty bad and still do just fine. So this kind of goes with my trend of don't be intimidated. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I did specifically say, hey, bolstering, remember, gotta do it even if we do a big pull. And then I'm going to go ahead and open this gate, like I said, and we'll get started with the mechanics. So these spike claws, typically you won't pull this stuff on the left. I've seen some pug tanks do it. It's kind of weird. The mob types in them are not any different than what we'll fight going the other direction though. So, but it just messes up prideful and stuff. So most people don't do it. That said, we'll be talking about the mob types anyways in a future pull. These spike claws, however, are going to be the first thing pulled, and you'll see they have a magic buff. And that is something that can be cleansed off by Priest Dispel, both Mass Dispel and single target. Shamans can purge it. And most importantly, Blood Elves can use their racial to remove it, and they absolutely should. Once you remove it, it's gone. The only thing it does is it makes it so that when these things die, they put a curse on people around them that causes them to take more damage, and it stacks. So if all 5 of these guys die at once, we all take like a bunch of extra damage, and you'll see that despite the fact that we have a Blood Elf Demon Hunter tank, he does not do it, and it actually might be the reason that we have so much trouble with this. Not that bolstering wasn't its own trouble, but had we not had that curse, I think I could have healed us through this without any deaths, but the curse just kind of messed us up. So this is the big pull. Like I said, especially on bolstering, I think most groups would have just killed the things separately just to not accidentally bolster, but it is what it is. He's going to pull this all in, and let's talk about the mob types. The spike claws I've already talked about. They will cause a bleed, which on fortified can be kind of rough, so look out healers, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Honestly, their only real pain is that they do on-death affixes like bolstering, and that thing that you want to cleanse, that obviously the tank did not cleanse. And since he's doing a little bit of a weak pickup, unfortunately, it looks like they're also going to go smack a DPS, but that's always going to happen. That's not mob type specific. And then we've got the Tirnan Villager, these big trees. They will basically, for the most part, they do a frontal cone. So you will see a blue cone appear in front of them. And then if you're caught up in that cone, you will get bewildered. So you're like disoriented. The healer can technically heal that off. It's a magic debuff on you. However, their dispels are way more important on something else in this fight. So do not stand in that. Don't make them waste their dispel on you just because you were standing in the wrong spot. Just move out of the blue stuff. It's as simple as that. The other thing that the villager does is it will pick someone and start putting them in a little seed cocoon. They will be stunned until that seed cocoon is broken. So if you see someone getting cocooned, make sure you switch to that cocoon quickly. And also healers, that does also a lot of damage on fortified, so be ready to heal someone if they're getting cocooned. Then the Soul Cleavers are the other particularly, as far as I'm concerned, bad mobs in here. The Soul Cleavers are going to put a magic debuff on your tank. Each one will put up 1 and it does stack. So it will get, your tank will get 2 debuffs. And those debuffs make that tank take extra damage. So particularly on fortified weeks or with high bolster stacks or in big pulls, the healer really needs to cleanse that off the tank as soon as it reaches 2 stacks. So that's why you really don't want to be cleansing people who got bewildered. That's their fault. Your dispels are for the tank. And then this other guy whose name escapes me now, the Harvester, that's it. He spirit bolts people, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. But the other thing he'll do is Harvest Essence, which is AoE damage that also heals him, I believe. So you want to interrupt Harvest Essence. And that's basically everything that's in this pull. So we're going to try and round them all up and AoE it down. You can see we've got these bleeds here are from the Spite Claws, so that's unfortunate. Here's the 2-stack debuff that needs to be cleansed off the tank. And then necrotics happening as well, just because, oh, that's the other thing it was this week. Necrotic bolstering, and yeah, tyrannical. So, okay, I always forget that there's another one in there. So now look at these things getting bolstered as can be, and you can see this purple thing stacking up. That's the Spite Claws dying, even though they never got cleansed. So this is the tank's fault, and look at how fast it stacks up. So everyone is taking massive amounts of extra damage, and look at this, we've got a Harvest Essence going off, which is doing AoE damage from a multiple bolstered thing, while everyone's taking like 5 stacks of increased damage. So that right there is what why you need to respect bolstering for what it is, even if it's not fortified, and also cleanse those things. Very important to cleanse those things. So now we're just going to try to do what we... Oh, and also these Soul Cleavers, you can see he's largely big because he's bolstered, but also you can see he's glowing a little bit. They will gain a debuff. I think it's called like Soul of Thros or Hand of Thros or something. Your tank needs to look out for that, because when they're doing that, they do a lot of extra damage. So on high fortified keys, it's not uncommon to see a tank kite those, and to see people help the tank kite, because they chunk him pretty bad at that point in time. However, a lot of tanks just face tank it. At a 15, they can probably face tank it, presuming they don't have 5 stacks of bolster, of course. So I, of course, got smacked, and I'm in my little pod, so I just have to watch my friends die. The torture. So I typhooned, not only to buy us time, because okay, so we've got a cardboard assassin down, very nice. But basically, I'm worried because if any of those hit any of us, we're gonna just get one shot. So I'm trying to buy us time until the tank comes back. And it also interrupted that Harvest Essence, which absolutely needs to be interrupted immediately. Look at how much a single Spirit Bolt got me down just because of this. So I'm trying to line of sight. I don't even think this is a line of sight spot, but I was just so worried and panicking. That said, I don't die, so obviously not a full wipe, so we're winners, right? Yes. Okay. We can do it, guys. I believe in us. So we're helping the tank kite. We got rings coming out. We've got vortexes. We've got typhoons, because we all know that if anyone gets hit by this, they're going to die immediately. And they also, I can hear them all saying, you know, I can see them all furiously typing to each other in tells, man, we should listen to this Resto Druid about the bolster. Okay, so this river pack. Most of the mobs are the same we've already fought, except for this bow breaker, but I'm going to explain that later because we're going to fight one later. We, as you can see, are skipping this. This is very skippable by a lot of different mechanics. Rogues can sap, mages can sheep and then invis after they get the first threat. You can use an invis potion if necessary, and you should absolutely have an invis potion in case it is necessary due to your group comp. Let's see, your monks, I paralyze and then boop it away to give us some extra space. There's all sorts of options to get around this. As you can see, we're using Imprison from the Demon Hunter, and that obviously works too. So you want to skip around. You need to absolutely hug this right wall. Do not go, oh, looks pretty good. Hug the right wall as much as you can. Oh, also, warlocks apparently can put a portal from somewhere back here over to here. I've only seen it happen once. and no one knew what was going to happen, so we just went around the other way. But theoretically, it is possible. Here we've got basically the same mobs we've already fought. So we got 2 Soul Cleavers. So remember, those are the guys that get the big glowy buff and might be kited. And they put the 2 stacks of the magic debuff on the tank that needs to be cleansed. The Harvesters will Soul Bolt, and they will cast Harvest Essence that should be interrupted because it's the AoE. This is also the next place we're going to see some Night Fae use. You can see my fellow Druid compatriot here is already opening this gate, and once that gate is open, we can go through, and there's all these mushrooms here. There's enough mushrooms for, okay, ooh, for some reason the mage got the debuff. That should not be normal. He pulled threat. The debuff should only go on the tank. So that's unfortunate that the mage died, but we have no misdirects, we have no tricks, and I think that the tank was the least geared and least experienced player here. So that's somewhat on the mage as far as I'm concerned. So I typhooned to both get us some time as well as stop that harvest essence since no one else was interrupting it. Cleanse that tank immediately as soon as he gets that debuff. And now he's doing a lot of kiting because he needs to keep an eye on he doesn't have his cheat death and he's got 34 stacks of necrotic. So honestly, healing him at this point doesn't really do much for me anyways. So I'm just going to go and grab a mushroom. Everyone gets a green mushroom. The purple mushrooms just increase. I forget if it's your stamina or your health technically, but it's just a health increase. So get the green mushroom, which is the stat mushroom, which is going to up your DPS and throughput and stuff. Here are the bow breakers that I mentioned that we'd talk about. So what these guys do, they basically have two mechanics other than just meleeing the tank. They will do Bramble Burst, which they will cast it, and then a thorn basically pops up underneath everyone's feet. That thorn will damage and slow that person. So when Bramble Burst comes, you need to move. You don't need to move far, but you need to move out of it. And the faster you move, the better, because like I said, it slows you. The other thing they do, they don't begin doing until after they go below 50%. At that point in time, they'll start doing something, I think it's called Furious Thrash or Thrashing or something like that. It's an AoE damage thing. You'll see that it's not too big of an issue this week because they're not going to get bolstered. They're not fortified. However, on things like Fortified Grievous, if they both go through at the same time, this is incredibly painful for healers to deal with. And additionally, the next fight really doesn't have a lot of damage coming out, so you could consider, popping a defensive during Furious Thrash to help out your healer. And just generally, healers be ready to do some AoE. So here's the Thrashing, you can see that going off, and then the Bramble Bursts. And then remember, your healer also has to move for the Bramble Burst, so that's also going to hurt their ability to heal through the Thrash. So here is Pride. I did the big explanation of Pride in the previous Mists of Tirna side. Now that I think about it, I think I'm going to not really explain Pride in depth right now and do a specific in-depth Pride specific video here. But point being, we are all going to stand in the F-low because we're all good peoples. So during Pride, I'll just give a basic rundown. The lines here, one person will be chosen at a time, and it could be anyone. It could be the tank, could be the healer, could be any DPS. And that person will get these orbs around them. And after that countdown that I'm doing goes away, an orb will shoot out in all of those directions. And if you get hit by the orb, it does a lot of damage, and it also is going to stun you. Now that stun is cleansable, but the healer really doesn't want to have to spend a GCD healing you and cleansing you for an avoidable mechanic, you know what I mean? So theoretically, and if you get the orbs, stay still, let everyone else move around you. It's unfortunate that a bunch of people are moving for one person, but I can't tell you the number of times that people with the orbs have panicked and moved, and someone else was adjusting around them. And as a result, there was just this, it's kind of like when you're walking in a different direction than someone down a narrow hallway, and you do that little dance of, oh, who's going left, who's going right, and you do some of that until eventually the orb goes off and you've stunned that person and wasted both of your time. So, unless you can absolutely quickly, efficiently, and safely move with the orb, don't move with the orb. Let other people move out of your way. Sadly, this mage did not get the memo. You can see him here. He is definitely within the path of my orb, so he is going to get hit by it. He is typing. Now we know why he didn't move. I will cleanse him. So now someone else got it, so I need to move from this one because you can see that that's pointing at me. And ta-da! So just keep an eye on where those orbs are coming. It really helps to run a weak aura that will do a countdown, such as what myself and the tank are running there. You can see this guy is not running it. So since we're all very visible to one another right now, it's not a big deal. But if he was out here as like a marksman hunter who wants to mess around out at max range, it could be very difficult for people to kind of notice. And the reason you're like, well, there's got to be on someone. If you don't see it in melee, it must be at ranged. Not necessarily. Like if they're immune at the time the game picks them, if they have anti-magic shield up, or if a paladin has their bubble up, they just won't get it. So a lot of times when like nothing happens for a while, it's because it was picked on someone who was immune at the time. So it's very important for people to know with where orbs are coming from. So run the weak aura. And also, you know how it would be really easy to know where it's when it's coming if everyone was standing in the F flow. Very, very good, very good. I have a pet peeve, can you tell? Let's see here. We're gonna finish the Pride. Oh, I should actually just explain also. So he's getting a stacking debuff. It can go up to 20 and it will stay at 20, and that's just causing more and more pulsing damage. So that's why you have to kill this relatively quickly. Now I hear you ask, should I use DPS cooldowns for it? This is situational based on your group and which Pride you're at. So for example, we are about to fight a tyrannical boss, and so it is more ideal to hold your cooldowns for that boss, generally speaking. However, this boss is one that has you'll see quickly here in a moment, that it has a phase where your DPS doesn't matter quite as much, and then it has a burn phase afterwards. So if you have really short cooldowns, maybe you would use it on the Pride. But then when I eventually do the other side video, you'll notice that the second Pride that comes after, it's the second Pride that comes right before Hakar. I don't ever want people to use DPS cooldowns on that. I will put as many healing cooldowns into that Pride as I need to make sure we can get Hakar Tyrannical down quickly. Versus if there's really nothing big coming up, hey, why not why not help the healer out? Especially on Grievous weeks, Prideful with Grievous is incredibly taxing on the healer. Help him out. And this is a great time for defensives in general. Your bark skins, your shield, and especially absorbs that also deal damage. Your shields of vengeance and your touch of karma, big value on Pride. Also, just anything that you can. Obviously, don't turtle. We don't want you to stop doing DPS just to help your healer out. But if you can just hit a little button, it's a good time for healing potions. It's a good time for health stones, things of that nature. So we're gonna finish off the Pride, and now that it's dead, we get this buff. This buff causes us to do a lot more damage, and it also causes us to gain like 5% of our mana back every second. So healers on Pride, do not worry about going at the end. As long as you have enough mana to barely eke through that Pride safely, you're going to get all your mana back immediately. So like go nuts, go balls to the wall mana-wise on Prideful if you want. So now we begin the boss with our fancy smancy Prideful buff. So this boss has two mobs in it. I'm going to call them Tree Dude and Little Dude because I don't remember their names. And the trees are hard to say their names anyways. So you start out, while you're fighting both of them, the tank does tank both of them. The DPS target at the beginning is Tree Dude. The point is, so the Tree Dude, like previous Tree Dudes in the instance, will do a frontal cone, bewildering cone. So just get out of the blue cone. He also can do, I think it's called like Anima Storm or something. It's Anima something, Tears of Anima, who knows. Either way, there's going to be some blue puddles on the ground. Don't stand in them. And I will show you what those look like and some extra considerations regarding them here in just a moment. The little guy, you're not yet necessarily trying to DPS. However, on Tyrannical, it's nice if you can use your interrupt tracker to keep an eye on whose interrupts are available and interrupt his spirit bolts whenever you can, because on Tyrannical, they do hurt quite a bit. That said, like I said, you're fighting the tree, and the reason for this is because once the tree hits 30%, he will then join your team and fight against the little guy, and that's when you switch to the little guy. That is your burn phase, so you can see that. You can see the bewildering pollen that just went off. Let's see here. Let me go a little bit slower and actually start pausing and talking about stuff. So the little guy cast Force Compliance on the tree, causing him to do Tears of the Forest. So these are the anima puddles I was talking about. We get out of the blue puddles before it hits, and then it's going to leave these puddles behind. These are important to keep an eye on where they're at, because the other mechanic that can happen here is a fear, and the fear will always fear you away from the boss. So if I get feared from where I'm currently standing away, you'll see I will get feared through a puddle and take some damage, versus this druid who will be feared through a clear area and he won't take damage. So I'm technically in a bad spot, not the worst spot. It's not like I'm up in here and would get feared through all of these puddles, but it's not the most ideal. So, and here's that bewildering pollen. You can't see it super well because I play on low graphics when I'm recording, but there's a blue cone out here pointed away from me. And if you were to be in there, it would disorient you if you got hit by it. So we're approaching 30%. So however, I do think this force compliance goes off. This one's the one that's going to fear us. So, yep. So we're going to get Tears of the Forest that is going to put out even more of these little puddles. And he's casting Repulsive Visage. This is a fear. That's a group fear. Shamans, this is a great time to drop Tremor Totem. Drop it as he's casting Repulsive Visage, and it should break you out almost immediately after it goes. Keep in mind everyone else is playing with that Shaman. Tremor Totem is a relatively short range, so move in a little bit during Repulsive Visage if you have a Shaman, because they're going to be able to hit you with Tremor Totem as long as they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is a little bit iffy given the Shamans I've pugged with. But if you're the Shaman, you're going to be impressive. You're going to know. You're going to get that done. The reason that you do the tree situation is you can see this guy he just cast Embrace Darkness, you see? Basically, he now is taking significantly less damage. But since the tree is about to join our team, he removes that debuff, and then we can burn him down again. So this is where you pop Hero. You use the last of your Prideful buff and do as much damage as you can. Now, no damage should be going out. You can even see the puddles are gone. So healers, this is a really important time to get as much damage in as you can. So switch over to full-on damage because everyone should be stable. After a little while, he's going to cast Soul Shackle, which will bring the tree back to his side. And now is when the decision needs to be made. Do you switch back to the tree or do you keep DPSing the little dude? If you have a significant amount of health left on the little dude, if he's at like 40%, switch back to the tree, DPS him down to 30% again, it's just a repeat of what you've already done. Since we have relatively high DPS, you can see our druid is admittedly with Hero and Prideful, but still he's pulling 17k, our mage is pulling 13k, our lowest DPS is doing 10k right now in this fight. Like I said, Prideful and Hero and all that, but we're pretty confident that we're going to be able to kill this guy before he gets that kind of near immunity buff again. So we're going to stick on the little guy, but keep in mind that if you can't finish off the little guy within a fair amount of, within maybe 15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds, you should probably switch back to the tree. And also keep in mind these last little while is going to take you a lot longer than the first because you don't have Pride anymore. Either way, we do get it handled. I think I take some damage right at the very end. Yeah, I just kind of stand in a lot of this stuff because I expected him to die slightly sooner. And you could see him casting the Embrace Darkness, so he was just getting his shield back by the time we killed him. So now we begin the maze section. So let's talk about the maze. This is it's a set pattern, but it's different each time. It's kind of like Waycrest, is that there's a few different configurations for the maze, and it's different every time you come in. This little mist color thing here down at the bottom is the thing that's creating the maze. So the first thing you want to do as you come through here is lock eyes with that little mist color and keep an eye on where he's going, because that is the first door. And Unite Fae folks, the other thing you want to be doing at the same time is coming over here and hitting this acorn. This acorn, once you've activated it, is going to give you a graveyard here so that if anyone dies, you will be able to res here, which is very important. Big time save. Very important to always remember to hit the acorn. I say this as someone who has never, ever forgotten to hit the acorn, right? Anyways, and then keep an eye on where our... And so I shut down my... As you can see, I shut down my health bars just so I can make sure that I can see where Mist Collar goes. Mist Collar is going forward. So we know that this is the correct door. We don't have to do the puzzle part of it. Now, we are currently fighting 2 mobs, and I'll talk about what those mobs do here in just a moment. However, it is common for groups to do a variety of things to try to pull some mobs from over here in this other room, especially if, like in our route, we aren't going to go into that next room anyways. That way you're not just fighting 2 mobs, which is a lot of time for not a lot of value, and also you get that extra % you otherwise wouldn't get on this route. In general, this makes a lot of sense. However, since we don't have a pet class like a hunter that can actually control their pet can just send their pets through the wall. As far as I'm concerned, they haven't fixed that, and their pets can do that. However, we don't have that, so our druid, you'll see his dot is clear up here on the map, and you will notice he doesn't do like any DPS for this bull. He's off trying to do this weird jump thing to try to pull them in. It's kind of complicated. I mean, it's not complicated, it's just it requires some specific timing. And it's, in this particular case, a really bad move, because by the time he actually gets it done, these two things that we're fighting are about to die, so everything comes in and gets needlessly 2-stack bolstered and wastes a lot of time, and in the meantime we didn't have his DPS, so honestly it probably didn't really give us that much value. Either way, it is what it is, it happens. So, the first thing we're fighting are these defenders. So these defenders they mute their mics and get a drink. Delicious, they say. So the main thing they're going to do that's problematic is this spear flurry, which they are currently doing. It is a frontal cone, and it goes for, as you can see, a little while, and it's not interruptible. You can stun them. And you want to get out of it. Just, see where they're pointing? Don't be in front of them. It's as simple as that. The other thing to know about them is when anything dies around them, they get enraged. Now, druids, hunters, and rogues can de-enrage with their various class mechanics to do so. However, by the time that things are dying around these dudes, they should also be pretty low health themselves. I've rarely found it worth it to de-enrage them, worth the GCD, since they're just going to die shortly anyways. But it is worthwhile to know, in case something goes super wrong, that you can de-enrage them. So you can see our poor monk there nearly got wrecked because he was taking probably both of the spear flurries. So we're gonna keep on going. So spear flurries, I move a little bit because I was taking one of them. And you can see the druid has finally succeeded in his mission to bring these 4 mobs in, just in time for these things to die and bolster our newcomers. So now we've got a few new mob types. We've got the Fox, which is casting Mistveil Bite on me right now. The bite is relatively chunky. Even on Tyrannical, it can do some damage, and on Fortified, it actually, I will regularly put like an external into whoever gets it, because you can't cleanse it, but you just have to heal through it basically. If you get the bite, I highly recommend using a defensive to help your healer out. And then let's see here, what else have we got here? Oh, we've got the thing that can do the roots. I think it's the Shaper that does the roots. I'm waiting to see. Yeah, so it must be. Yeah, so we've all got this magical roots, right? So, you think roots, whatever, who cares? I don't mind. But you do care, because remember that Spear Flurry is a frontal cone, and it's now an enraged double bolstered frontal cone, so you definitely want to be able to get out of that. And if you're rooted, you might have some tough luck there. So monks, it's a magic root, so monks can revival, Mistweaver monks can revival, healers can heal 1 person, and it's a root, so druids can shift out of it, superior gnomes can use their racial, paladins can freedom, monks can tiger's lust. Anything you have that can break roots can break you out of this, and you should use it, because otherwise you might end up in some trouble with both the Spear Flurry as well as the other mechanic that I'm going to point out here. You can't see it behind this bolster icon, but this other centaur type is casting Bucking Rampage. You can see lightly, because everything is blue, a blue circle around that mob. That mob is going to cast Bucking Rampage up, if you'll watch my cursor, so it's going to cast up, and then once it finishes, it will then channel down. And while it's channeling down, it's going to do a lot of damage to any player that's within that circle, and it's going to knock them back. And given that it's double bolstered, it is going to do a lot of damage. And, once again, remember, my poor melee here, he's snared. That's unfortunate. So he's kind of screwed. So that's why Bucking Rampage is such a problem. When, that's why those thorns, a lot of the mobs in this whole maze section, to be completely honest, are, as individuals, not that difficult, but when you combine the types of the mobs in any given pull, they can stack on top of each other and become quite deadly. So the thing about Bucking Rampage, which is important to know, is you can't kick it, but you can stun it to interrupt it. However, if you stun it while it's doing the cast up, it will just recast it as soon as the stun is gone. But if you stun it when it begins its cast down, it won't do it again for a while. So hold your stun, your paralysis, your imprison, anything like that till like right as it begins ticking downward. And you can see, so the poor monk took one bucking rampage there, and he almost died. See, it is rough. All right, so another thing to consider. So now we're all just trying to help everyone kite because we've got to deal with the freaking, because we've got to deal with the bolsters that they've created for us. So the maze in general. Who does the maze, I hear you asking? This is a matter of opinion and comp. We, of course, saw already that it's the front one this time. Now, this, like I said, is going to have to do with opinion and comp. I am a healer, and I'm very mobile because I'm playing a Resto Druid. As such, it is very easy for me to do the maze. I'm more than happy to do it. That said, if I'm on my Paladin, or to a lesser extent my Monk, but especially on my Paladin, I would much rather be in melee. My healing doesn't require, but it highly values me being in melee and doing damage to mobs. I can't be running around on the periphery doing the maze. So at that point in time, it's usually better for someone else to do it. Maybe a ranged class that can move, like a marksman hunter, I think, can do it. Or Beastmastery. Beastmastery is the one that I think can just do their whole rotation on the move still. I don't really remember. I haven't played them since Battle for Azeroth. But either way, essentially the most mobile range you have should do it, or the person who's going to lose the least amount of DPS across the group should do it. And there's add-ons that you'll see me using. It's a weak aura, not an add-on. That makes it very easy. At the end of the day, though, it's usually in most people's minds the healer's job, but especially on fortified weeks, this trash can be quite dangerous, especially if people are not dealing with it well. And as a healer, you might need to focus on healing. Don't feel bad about that. Try to, eke in them some maze while you go. And I will show you how the maze works here, so I can more properly explain eke in the maze as you go. So the way the maze works is you go stand next to one of these pillars. The pillars are going to be all around the chamber. And after a moment of standing near the pillar, a symbol will appear. I apologize for the pauses, but at least I'm not coughing in your ear. So a symbol will appear. So we see here we have empty flower without a circle. So I'm going to find this on my weak aura, hit that, and then go to the next one. Go to the next one, stand there for a moment. Now we've got empty flower with a circle, hit that one. And then we've got a full leaf without a circle. And so what the goal is to either use your brain meats or a weak aura in order to determine which one's different. So you can see these were both empty flowers. So, well, this one was a full leaf, so that one's different. So that's why it's the solution. And so now that I know the solution, I can return to just focusing on healing and DPSing. I don't think there's any specific mob type in here that we haven't already seen. Nourish the Forest, that was just interrupted. Good interrupt there. It does need to be interrupted because it's an AoE hot that goes on all the mobs. So you want to interrupt it, and if you don't interrupt it, you want to immediately you want to cleanse as many as you can. So Blood Elf Racial is very powerful. Mass Dispel from a Priest, very powerful. Or just single targeting, purging with shamans and demon hunters and such. Mages, you can spell steal it and get some free healing out of that, which is not a bad idea. Just more spear flurries to not stand in, things of that nature. And then now that everything's dead, we can go through and I begin the maze again. So what I say when I'm saying that we need to eke out the maze as we go is, for example, like they're not getting chunked because it's not fortified weak, but it takes a moment after you appear at the, after you stand up next to the pillar in order for the pillar to actually show its icon that it has. So what I will do if I'm kind of pressed for the ability to heal but also need to be doing the maze is I will cast my on-the-move spells. So for druids, you know, your rejuves, your Cenarian wards, your swift men's, placing down an F-low, things of that nature, while I'm moving between here. And then when I have to stop and wait for this to appear anyways, that's when I'll toss out a regrowth or a wild growth as necessary. And then when I move to the next one, time to do more of those cast on the move. Same with, you know, a monk. I can do my renewing mists and my essence fonts while moving, and then pop out some vivifies and enveloping mists or whatever while I'm waiting for the icon to appear. So that's a good way to still be able to heal while also doing the maze as well, since most people do consider it the healer's job. So the moth mob, which it does this anima injection. It will jump to someone at random and put a dot on them. That is, it will put a circle around that person, and it will also do damage to that person. So you need to cleanse that magic debuff. I almost get this guy killed by being very slow to cleanse it, but I got it just in time. And also, so I've solved the maze, I think. Okay, so I did technically solve the maze, but I forgot which one I'd hit first. It's this one back here, but that's why I'm going to ones that I've already gone to. And then once I've solved the maze, I have no idea why people are taking damage, and I shouldn't have turned away so that we can't see. Once I solve the maze, if we're fighting Prideful, I will virtually always mark it with a world marker, because when you're fighting Prideful, it's easy to get turned around or distracted and forget which one was which. I don't always mark with a world marker, but on Prideful I tend to. All right, and through we go now that we have the Prideful buff. Unfortunately, with the maze, you can't always, you know, make sure that you have the Prideful for the best possible pulls. You just kind of got to take it where Blizzard gives it to you. So there's the anima injection. It's on me, so I cleanse. Nourish the forest going off. We got a good cleanse there. And through we go. So regardless of which one you always get a single kind of mini boss type mob. If you go to the left, you'll get the frog, which is what we got. He does a frontal cone kind of tongue lick, so don't stand in front of him when he does the tongue lick. And then don't stand in, he'll like jump at someone and put a swirl underneath them. Just stay out of swirls. He can swirl around himself, get out of the swirls. Bottom line, get out of the swirls. If you're on the right, your mini boss will be a dragon. The dragon will turn to anyone. It isn't necessarily the tank. It will turn to anyone and do a frontal cone attack that hits. It's very long. So if you're the one who's doing the maze, it is very likely that it will point at you, either by directly pointing at you or pointing at someone who was like in the line to you, and you might not realize that it was going to hit you. So like keep an eye on where that is when you're doing the maze, when you're fighting the dragon. The other thing the dragon will do is put down a blue puddle underneath itself, and that puddle will heal anything inside of it. So the tank needs to pull the dragon out of the puddle, and then if y'all want to, you can go stand in the puddle. However, there shouldn't be any damage going out at that point in time, so it's really not that useful to stand in the puddle either way. All right, I paused here to talk about something important. We can see here this tender, that's the one that does Nourish the Forest, and it did get Nourish the Forest off. So that's the hot that I'm talking about that can be cleansed or spell stolen. Our blood elf does not use his racial very well. He doesn't use it at all, I'm pretty sure. And then I've got so I can't really do anything about that, sadly. For my blood elf form, it's just an illusion. But I can cleanse this monk, so I'm going to do that. And then just going to do what we can to try to help this tank do the kiting out because he had so many stacks. Another Nourish the Forest. So lots of Nourish the Forest going off, sadly. That's what's causing this fight. You can see one of them still at full health. This is just not a good pull. I didn't even notice this went so bad so soon. But yeah, we are definitely, they've all full healed at this point, and they're still bolstered. So that's most unfortunate. So actually, let's go back and show that MVP play real quick. So you can see we're all rooted here, right? The root also went off, and a bucking rampage is about to go off. It will probably hit that guy. It will definitely hit this guy. It will definitely hit the tank. I've cleansed the tank, and theoretically maybe some people could blank or not, but either way, this is a very dangerous situation. So you'll see here that the mage was kind enough to Dragon's Breath. That was an incredibly good Dragon's Breath. Unfortunately, he didn't wait for it to channel down to actually truly stop it, but if he'd waited too long and caused us to get a tick, that would have been very dangerous. So that was a good play on his part. I just wanted to... Good job, Cakes. That's what his name was, apparently. So this is unfortunate. So we've got these not super bolstered, these relatively bolstered big dudes, including one that does like an AoE frontal and one that does an AoE around him, and we're fighting Pride. So particularly when you're struggling, there might be a question of do I kill the mob or do I kill the Pride? It's almost always the mob, to be completely honest. Very rarely does your healer want you to fight a bunch of mobs for the entire duration of Pride. So finish off these mobs, which we do. We try and keep them away from melee itself and get through that. And now we're safely through till we can just fight the Pride. I've already marked the correct doorway so that we can move on as soon as we do this, and I think that the next one is the boss. All right, yep, boss time indeed. So Mistcaller has actually several mechanics, but none of them are all that difficult. So the tank is going to start out tanking. What a surprise. And the first mechanic you'll typically see is dodgeball. So all of these arrows come out. Every single arrow points at a player. And after that, when the cast goes off, a ball is going to shoot very quickly out of this boss. So you just need to, when that arrow goes out, just move to an area the arrows aren't pointing at. It's as simple as that. Then it's going to patty cake. Tanks, this is your job. This must be interrupted, otherwise it's going to do a big chunk to you, and it's going to stun you. However, no one else can interrupt this. This is only interruptible by the tank. So keep an eye out for patty cake. Freeze tag is probably the most problematic of mechanics here. She's going to summon a fox. You can summon it near any player. So particularly if it gets summoned in melee, it may be very difficult to CC it. But if it's summoned at range, like this one is, you can see this fox has just appeared here. It's usually very easy to CC it. You can do all sorts of CC. You can you can imprison, paralyze, polymorph, roots. You cannot do a Ring of Peace or Typhoon or any just pushback, but you can do like full snares. So what you do is, when you see it happen, you do whatever CC you need to, get it CC'd, and it will eventually disappear on its own. You can see we've gone a little bit crazy on the CC. And so now that here comes another dodgeball, so we need to move while not moving towards the fox. The reason that fox needs to be CC'd, by the way, is because if it's going to focus on someone and chase them. And if it hits anyone, not just the person it's chasing, but if it gets in melee with anyone, that person takes a ton of damage and gets stuck in an ice block for it. It's pretty long. It's like 10 seconds. Feels like an eternity. And that can spread. So let's say that just the monk got hit by the fox, but the monk is close enough to the tank that the tank would also get ice blocked. So you definitely want to avoid the foxes. A big deal to avoid the foxes. So CC helps out there a lot. And guessing game. Here's the final mechanic. So she's going to summon a bunch of symbols, just like we saw in the maze. And again, you're just finding out what's different. So you can see here we've got leaf, leaf, leaf. So the different thing is this one, the flower. So we're all going to go and kill that one. You can ignore the other ones. They are all going to be putting out AoE DPS though. So this on Tyrannical can be a little bit tough for some healers. So help your healers out here, everyone. But definitely the big priority is to get that penalizing burst down quickly while not being hit by this dodgeball. Keep in mind that if the tank brings the boss here, which they should because the tank DPS helps, it will concentrate these dodgeballs pretty close together. So keep an eye on that. And then freeze tag, here comes another fox. Okay, good, it went out here arranged. So we need to be, so essentially what this is a lot of simple mechanics that compound on top of each other. None of them are difficult, but if you're taking AoE DPS from penalizing burst while the tank is worrying about kicking the patty cake while everyone else is moving out of arrows, and then suddenly there's a fox right behind you, it can get a little bit tense. So it just comes down to watching out for all of these mechanics that can be happening at the same time. Additionally and notably, if this boss happens on Tyrannical Explosive, this whole dungeon, this one and the last boss, are a trap. It actually ends up being very difficult because they have so many mobs around their room that take a while to die and can spawn explosives. So if you're ever fighting this on Tyrannical Explosives, if you are ranged, I highly recommend you consider it just to be your job to kill explosives during this fight, during the penalizing burst phase, because as much as we want your DPS on that penalizing burst, it's so often to see wipes occur because a explosive went off back in the back while everyone was killing it. So highly recommend you keep an eye out for that on days such, and our poor mage got hit by the dodgeball, so he cauterized. Another guessing game. So let's see here. What have we got here? We've got empty, 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 full. So it's this full one here. That's the correct one. And dodgeball. So I had to move out of that while moving towards what I needed. And a fox just spawned behind me. So we've got to avoid that fox. It's heading towards melee. It hit the either, I don't know if it was that or the dodgeball, but something killed the monk. So you can see how these things can compound to create a relatively scary situation, despite the fact that none of the mechanics individually are all that difficult. So we just keep continuing, keep DPSing, hopefully not losing any more monks. Nearly there, everyone. And then you get a nice break of RP, which is for rezzing people who got hit by dodgeballs. If you have water walking shoes on your mount, keep in mind that it can kill you on this fall. So, aim downwards on your way down if you have water walking shoes on your mount. If you have a trolley death knight, also prepare for Path of Frost. Oh no, come back. Don't want to miss out on that super important content. So this right here is another acorn. My other druid friend is already hitting it. This is, among all of the things that the Night Fae can do in this dungeon, this is probably the most important one. The next area has a mechanic that is very likely to kill people. Just unfortunately it happens. We've all been there. We've all been knocked off the platform at some point. So having an extra graveyard here is a big deal. That said, now it's time for a bug deal. So, staghorns have two things that need to be kicked. Stimulate resistance and stimulate regeneration. One reduces damage taken and the other one heals. So that is the priority target, or the staghorns. And then also, both of their things need to be interrupted. So watch your interrupt tracker and make sure that you have interrupts available for both. Acid golds don't ever need to be interrupted. They're going to pick someone and put it looks like a poison, but it's not like a cleansable poison. They just have to deal with it. It puts a circle around your feet, and anything around you also takes damage. So we just saw the stimulate resistance get kicked by the monk, and I have that volatile acid, which is that poison that can't be cleansed like a poison. And then you can see it's on the mage now too. So we don't have each other or anyone else in our circles, and I just have to heal through it. If on fortified you get this, consider maybe popping a defensive if you have one. Obviously, as a healer, I think everyone has a million defensives, you can tell. I'm just pointing out places that you might choose to use them so that they don't go to waste. There's not like a play. If there's ever a time you absolutely should save a defensive, I will let you know. But just these are just useful spots to put it. Now, this next pull, depending on your route and your tank and stuff, can be very big or relatively small. So let's talk about how it can be split. Particularly, you'll do a large pull if you sometimes you'll get a pride right here based on how your maze went. And if you have pride, a lot of people are going to do larger pulls. So the base pull is just these two big bugs. and the little gormlings with them. Now the little gormlings don't do any on-death affixes, so you don't have to worry about them bolstering, only the big bugs do. You'll also see these hornets there. These hornets do a relatively, I don't know if you'd call it a large path, but they do path away. So they aren't necessarily part of this pull, but they often will get pulled with it. So that's the you know, the level 1 pull is the bugs, level 2 pull as the hornets, and then sometimes, depending on the week and the affixes, and if you have pride, you'll actually have the tank kind of hang out here, he'll pull one side, and then he'll have a hunter or a rogue or someone pull this other side of big bugs as well. With bolstering, that would be a poor idea, so I'm glad that we don't do it. And let's go ahead and get started in looking at it. So we're going to go in. Now this introduces a new mob type, which is these gorgers. This other large bug is called a gorger. And what it does is it does a big green circle on the ground, and anyone who's in that green circle when it goes off is going to get knocked back, which usually, as you can tell, with all this abyss around us, means being knocked off the platform to your death. It also does a lot of damage even if it doesn't knock you off. So you need to avoid the green circles. That's the mechanic that is likely to kill someone that I really think that Acorn's super useful for. Now, it is notable that the Gorger can be stunned, which will stop that green circle from being cast. So if you happen to notice one's going off, and you just want to stun it to make sure no one accidentally gets knocked off, that's a really good value stun that I think it doesn't get enough attention from people. So we're just going to kill these. Like I said, the little larvae don't do on-death affixes. They do stack necrotic though, so that's why we're kind of being a little bit more careful here with our poor little tank. And now we've got these, now these two big bugs will bolster our hornets, but it is what it is. It's not the worst thing in the world. These hornets, basically their mechanic is that they will pick someone, charge to them, and put a poison on them. And that poison can stack if the person gets picked multiple times before being cleansed or having it run out. So cleanse it if you can. Keep in mind that some healers can't cleanse poisons. So for example, if you're running this with a shaman, and if I was a shaman, it would be this monk or this druid's job to cleanse poisons if they were getting too bad. It's not fortified, they're not going to get too bad. But I just want to, I really want to get DPS and tank players who have cleanses to start realizing that cleansing is not only the healer's job, but I've got 2 stacks now, so I'm the cleanse priority here for sure. So I'm going to cleanse myself as soon as my cooldown's up. There it is. And then we just kill the bugs. Really, it's just they run at someone, they poison them, and it can stack. That's really all they're about. And these are the same mobs as before. We've got the staghorn that needs the 2 different types of interrupts. We've got the gorger that can do the green circle. And we've got the acid golds that can put little circles around you that do damage to yourself and anyone in your circle. Additionally, we're going to get pride here. And one of my big pet peeves in Mists of Tirna Scythe is people who is like fighting the pride among all these bugs. You can see these bug bodies are huge, and it can make it very difficult to see where the person with the lines are. And that's all the more reason to run that weak aura that I mentioned, because you need to be able to you need to be able to, I don't know why I cycloned that was probably a misclick. You need to be able to see where it's coming from, and if they're buried under this bug body, you'll still be able to see their chat bubble. So that's why you should run a weak aura. It's also why the tank should pull stuff away from the bug bodies, as far as I'm concerned. So we're just going to kill the pride here. See, it's very difficult for me to see what, where those lines exactly were coming from. I knew I was safe, but I didn't know how safe, Living dangerously. Sorry about the alarms. They heard that I wasn't paying attention to pride. They're coming to lock me up. Sirens, I should say, not alarms. Okay, so another big pull, but again, we've got larvae, so no on-death affixes, same types of mobs as before. We don't have anything that's going to need an interrupt here. We don't have a resistance or anything like that. We do have a green circle dude, and we have a green circle around you dudes, so we want people to not get knocked back. They didn't, hooray. Now here, this tank is jumping into this next pull despite the fact that this thing isn't dead. So if he did that, he would needlessly give all of these guys a stack of bolster. So what I'm doing is I'm going to turn around, knock this back so we can kill it before it reaches there to save us all a bunch of time. Tanks, please consider how the affixes are going to change the way you pull. Healers can't make up for all your mistakes. Ha. So, okay, let's see here. So get out of the green circle. And again, so we've got double green circle, so highly likely to see green circles here and double green circle around you, but no big bugs for the stimuli resistance or anything. You'll see here we don't have 100%, right? This is very normal. You can't know exactly how much percent you'll get from the maze, but you'll virtually never be at 100% right here. So you go and fight the bugs around the corner instead. This one does, you'll see, have staghorn in it, so you have to be ready with the interrupts. Bunch of larvae, it's not a big problem, and a gorger is the green circle. Notably I know that the rare and elusive survival hunter has a problem with this. I'm not sure if anyone else does, but there are mosquitoes that are padding above you, and certain things, such as survival hunter's bombs, will ignore the vertical axis and can pull them if hit at the wrong time as they go by. So if you have a survival hunter or someone else who has that sort of problem, tanks, you might want to pull them into the room. And if you're someone who knows you have that kind of problem and the tank isn't pulling for that reason, keep an eye on that pat and don't pull it by accident. It's as simple as that, right? So you can see some of the bugs padding nearby. But okay, so that's not the one. I was going to say, I think the next one that gets pulled comes, yeah, so they were just over us and they've just passed us. So here we go. So we've got the pride. This is our final pride. Now, depending on the affix, particularly certain fortifieds, because these things might take so long to kill, and the boss isn't that big of a deal, so it's not that important to have pride for the boss. It is not uncommon to kill the boss and then come kill the last trash and not even get the last prideful. So you might see that at some point, particularly on fortified keys. But since it's tyrannical, we definitely want to have the pride for this boss. Finishing up the pride, and here we go. So this boss's whole situation is essentially that it's getting smarter over time. So it has the same mechanics, but the mechanics get harder each time they go off. So let's talk about what they do. First comes the acid expulsion. So you can see I've got one green swirl under my feet, right? So I need to move out of that. Should I just go anywhere? No, because it's going to remember how I moved. So I moved slightly to the right, right? Keep that in mind. I moved slightly to the right on acid expulsion. Parasitic infester just went off. That absolutely needs to be interrupted. It didn't go off. It was about to go off and got interrupted. Good, because it absolutely needs to be interrupted. If that goes off, someone gets a parasite on it and they basically get mind controlled and you have to DPS them instead of the boss. Not a good look. So make sure that those get kicked. In particular, people with a ranged kick, like counter spells and counter shots and things like that. Keep in mind that your melee might end up having to run later in the fight for a variety of reasons, be it adds or puddles or something. So you should definitely be prepared to be the one to interrupt that at ranged if necessary. So consumption. So this is, as you can see, there's AoE damage going out in general, as well as these blue swirls that you can't stand in. And she's also got a shield. You can see up here how much damage it's going to take to break the shield. Once the shield breaks, it becomes interruptible. So now we could interrupt consume if we wanted to. However, if you interrupt to consume, she's going to go back to doing her other mechanics, which, like I mentioned, every time she does them, they get harder. So it might be valuable then, people say, to just let consume go for its full duration, heal through the damage, and that way you don't have future mechanics. I can see a good reason for both, especially depending on the affixes. So it is not uncommon for people to let this go through. It's also not uncommon for people to kick it. So be prepared for either one of them. We don't kick it in this particular group though. But so you can see how much damage is going out even when people aren't being hit by the circles. That's why healers don't typically like to see it going off, but it is better than getting overwhelmed by mechanics later. So that's finally out. And okay, so the acid expulsion went. So oops, I should go back a little bit to actually explain it as it's happening. So acid expulsion comes after the consume. And okay, so you remember last time I had the acid expulsion, I moved slightly to the right, right? Well, look, so this one is on my foot, and then there's also one that's going slightly to the right because that's the direction which I moved. So instead, I'm going to move slightly to the left. And so that way, the next time it comes, I'll have one that stands where it is, one that goes slightly to the right, and one that goes slightly to the left. Parasitic Infestor and Accelerated Incubation. This is the only other mechanic in this. Oh, actually, I forgot about Mindling. But anyways, this is the next mechanic in the fight. So these little larvae come out from all directions, target someone, and just munch on them. So what I do, I don't know if it favors the healer or if it's just coincidence, but I feel like I get it about half the time. And I just hang out melee adjacent so that they all group up on me. And then I'll, once they're all there, I'll vortex them or do something to keep them in place. And then I'll get out so that everyone can just AoE it down with the boss, cleaving onto the boss. So remember, now here comes another acid expulsion. So based on the way I moved, we'll have one that goes slightly to the right, one that goes slightly to the left, and I'm going to go slightly behind in order to control where that goes. So this is how you control the green stuff so you don't get overwhelmed and have it coming in crazy locations. We've got another consume going off. Again, we did interrupt that one. That's okay. That's going to give me an excuse to say mind link. So we had another parasite against Fester. Show me the mind link. So you saw that we had one to the right, one to the left, one behind, and now I went off to the side. Mind link. Finally, I'm targeted. So what mind link does is it picks a player and links a bunch of other players to them. And you want to break that tether by moving further away from the person you're linked to. Now, if you're further away than the link in general from that, like if someone else is clear over here and I'm over here, we just won't get linked in the first place. So what I do is if I get targeted by the mind link, I just head out, like not in any one direction, just out, so that I'll be more likely to be away from everyone anyways, and then immediately move back in. I cannot stress enough, everyone, that one of the biggest issues healers have on this fight is trying to chase down people who are standing at their max range while their friend Joe is standing on the other side at their max range, and the healer can't reach both of them without standing in a green puddle. It's very stressful. Once you've moved out of various mechanics, come in a little bit. You don't have to come give the boss a big hug, but you should at least be, keep in mind whether or not you're in your healer's range. I got targeted by the little bugs again, so again I head towards the tank and I let them convene on me, and then I get out and we kill them all. Mind link. This time I wasn't the main target. It can actually link you to the entire rest of the party. We just happen to be so spread out it's not happening, and we also haven't seen the mechanics so often. That's kind of the thing, is if we hadn't let the consume go for its full duration, we'd have seen more mind links, thus more people getting targeted, and for as long as you're linked, you're taking damage, so that's not good. I was not expecting to do another expulsion, so I was not prepared for this, and so I'm going to take some damage, but we'll be fine, and we killed the boss.